The Galactic Empire did not officially acknowledge its failures. It refined them, polished them, buried them under 16 layers of bureaucracy, then rebranded them as cultural enrichment initiatives. But what happened at Auction ID 5487 was different. It didn't fail quietly. It detonated. The broadcast feeds never recovered. Emergency records went missing. The Imperial transcript clerk assigned to the event reportedly threw himself into a null-gravity blender and left behind only a sticky note that read, "I will not record lies for the arrogant." And yet, despite the blackout, the story spread. Not in holofeeds or interstellar trade reports, but through whispers. Among smugglers in the unlicensed trade lanes, it became a campfire myth. Among diplomats, it became a footnote carved in redacted ink. Among planetary governors, it became a warning. Never underestimate human mating rituals. And for those who had been in the arena, who had watched 5 silent lethal men reclaim 5 calm, unbreakable women without firing a single lethal shot, it became religion. Aboard the ship known only as the Quiet Option, Theo sat beside Eve in the command lounge. She had her boots up on the console, cleaning the dirt from her nails with a scalpel. "You still garden?" she asked without looking. He nodded. "Tomatoes mostly. They miss you. Did you name them after me?" "Just the mean ones." She smiled. Not big. Just enough to crack the iron shell around her mouth. "Thanks for showing up. Wasn't optional." "No," she said. "It wasn't." Elsewhere, Jack stood behind his wife in the weapons bay of their freighter, calibrating a pulse rifle while she catalogued stolen Imperial protocols. "You look tired," she said. "I missed arguing with you. I missed letting you win and pretending I didn't." He smiled. She didn't. She never did. But when she reached back and tapped his hand once, he didn't need words. They were married. That meant more than blood. It meant trust. Sam Thorne and his wife meditated side by side in a stasis cocoon on the edge of a star well. She had braided her hair into the old warrior knots. He had shaved his face for the first time in 4 years. She spoke first. They thought silence meant surrender. Sam said nothing. She nodded. Exactly. On the diplomatic vessel now stripped of its diplomatic status, Halon 3 recalibrated every file on Terran physiology. His wife watched him for a long moment. "You going to delete the record?" "No," he said. "I'm going to let them try." She smirked. "You haven't changed. I've just become more efficient at being me." She walked away, and he turned his gaze back to the stars. They blinked in neat, predictable algorithms. At least most of them did. In the bookstore that no longer sold books, Nora sat across from her husband in a hidden chamber deep below Earth's crust. "They'll come again," she said. "Yes. They won't make the same mistake." "No," he agreed. "They'll make new ones." She slid a box across the table. Inside were old photos, wedding bands, a sealed envelope neither of them had ever opened. "Want to disappear again?" she asked. He shook his head. "Not this time." "What changed?" "You said, we." Meanwhile, the Empire drafted its reports. The High Council called it an unanticipated cultural misalignment. The Emperor issued a decree: humans were to be observed, but not detained. Befriended, but never courted. Accommodated, but never studied. The diplomatic term for this was respectful deterrence. In the lower tiers, Imperial academies quietly updated their history texts. A new phrase entered the lexicon of caution: never bid on what you don't understand. And below that, in code no one dared read aloud, was another directive. If human wife equals true, then back away slowly. On one of the auction platforms, long since abandoned, a single technician swept ash from the corners. He found a wristband. Still glowing. He picked it up. It sparked. Once. A voice crackled through the speaker embedded in the metal. It said, in a calm, amused tone, "Don't touch what isn't yours." He screamed. In the galactic black markets, counterfeit Earth-wife protocol tech became an immediate bestseller. No one knew what it did. No one dared activate it. It was bought for fear, not function. Some whispered that just owning one could make an assassin pause. Some swore the real thing could unmake you with a kiss. None of it mattered. Because the original 5? They were off the map. And they'd left behind just enough legend to keep everyone cautious. Back on Earth, the bookstore reopened. It didn't sell books anymore. It sold warnings. Nora ran the front counter. Her husband restocked the shelves, each volume a hollowed container for emergency tech, encrypted maps, DNA fakes. Above the register hung a plaque. It read, "They tried to sell our wives. We came and took them back. Now ask yourself, what would we do if someone took Earth?" The customers never asked. They just paid, bowed, and left. Some never came back. Smart ones didn't try to. Out in the stars, in a sector marked unworthy of interest by the Imperial Cartography Guild, 5 ships flew in quiet formation. No transmissions. No signals. No threat displays. Just presence. And that was enough. The stars made room. And somewhere, in a bureaucratic office 6 levels below the Imperial Treasury, a junior archivist added a new category to the Interspecies Diplomacy Index. Terran Union. Aesthetics. Moderate. Technological prowess. Variable. Emotional expression. High. Aggression level when provoked. By nation. High. By spouse. Apocalyptic. He paused. Then added a note in the margin. Do not provoke humans romantically. Ever. Especially the married ones. The Empire would recover. It always did. But this time, it would recover carefully. With caution. And with a new fear. Not of war fleets. Not of bombs. Not even of rogue Earth tech. But of love. Because the most terrifying thing in the galaxy wasn't a superweapon. It was a man in love with a woman who had been taken. And the lesson burned into history, without fanfare, without blood, without needing to be shouted, was simple. If you auction a human girl, you better be ready for what walks out of the shadows to take her home. The peace arena shimmered like a hallucination above a dying blue star, an enormous orbital amphitheater with impossible geometry, held aloft by bureaucratic intent and gravity fields that hummed in legalese. Around its circumference pulsed the color-coded banners of conquest, purple for diplomacy, red for blood victories, and a nauseating lemon yellow for stability through ceremonial conflict. From afar, it looked like a temple. Up close, it reeked of ambition, ozone, and deep-fried something. Inside, 80,000 beings crammed into pulsating bio-seats, shifting in waves of clicks, hisses, and gelatinous tremors. Species that could not agree on a universal alphabet had no trouble agreeing that today was a spectacle. The peace duel was more than tradition. It was theater, politics, and a tax write-off. And as the announcer gurgled to life, projecting sound through all known frequencies, the mood turned rabid. Honored creatures, photosynthesizers, and moral relativists, boomed a voice from a 12-eyed mollusk levitating over the center stage, its tendrils gripping a gold-plated mic that had once belonged to a dead emperor. Welcome to the final duel of Sector 92C, where conflict is culture, and today's result will affirm, once and for all, that this sector is secure. A cheer rose, literally, into the rafters, where it condensed into rain and fell onto the crowd. This was tradition. Everything was tradition here, including the pretense that this wasn't a blood sport with better lighting. Across the arena's edges, betting screens flickered to life. Odds scrolled in neon languages. Tentacles twitched over glass. Species with 3 livers and no concept of mercy placed wagers with offhand indifference. There was a quiet collective agreement that today's match wasn't going to last long. It never did. These closing fights were perfunctory, ceremonial, a way to show that even the scrappy primitives could be part of the big galactic family, provided they knew when to lie down and die on cue. And today's sacrificial species? Humans. A roar of laughter spiked through the southern stands, where a flock of Julari dignitaries, bird-like beings in silken bone tunics, cawed in amusement. What are they sending this time? One chortled, preening his throat feathers. A poet? A mother? Perhaps a small child with a hopeful glint. More laughter. On the eastern edge, the Thargans, a militarized crustacean race with the posture of offended librarians, clicked their mandibles with mild interest. They'd fought humans before. Dangerous in groups, perhaps. Occasionally clever. But alone. Soft. Flawed. Poetic to the point of self-destruction. On the western quadrant, a puddle of Zenthari emissaries rippled with intellectual disdain. The Zenthari, being sentient clouds of emotion and neurotransmitters, had no faces to sneer with, but one could feel the smugness. And in the high box, floating in a pressure-modulated chamber of scented vapor, sat Grand Strategist Vern. He wore a robe woven from the hair of extinct prophets and stared down at the arena with the satisfaction of someone about to tick a box on a very important form. "Peace must be performed," he murmured to his assistant, a half-metal being named Frigg. "Especially for species who believe in drama." Frigg nodded, noting it down. Below, the arena floor began to transform. Panels slid aside with hisses of steam and old breath. Jungle terrain rose in stylized lumps. A few trees, a hollow log, something that might have been a ruined temple but was probably a recycled coffee kiosk. A lava stream gurgled from nowhere. This was not a battlefield. It was a set piece, designed by committee, approved by 10 ethics councils, and fatal in all the wrong ways. Now entering, the mollusk howled, on behalf of the Galactic Unified Command, the champion of order, the vanguard of crushing reality, undefeated in 67 consecutive duels. General Korach of the Xanathi. The stadium shuddered. Korach did not enter so much as descend. A wall split open like it regretted ever existing, and from it emerged a being carved from pure narrative menace. 8 feet tall. 14 limbs. Armor like polished obsidian. A halo of energy pulsed behind him, whether decorative or tactical was unclear. In one of his clawed hands, he carried a halberd forged from something illegal. He roared. It echoed through dimensions. The crowd lost its collective mind. "Doesn't he look divine?" cooed a gelatinous ambassador to no one in particular. Korach stalked to the center platform, raised his weapon, and roared again, just to make sure any passing deities heard him. "Bring me your best." The announcer mollusk oozed joy. And now, the challenger. There was a pause. A long one. No epic music. No lighting shift. No battle chant or tribal display. A door hissed open, and a single human walked out. She was small. Not child small, but compact. Contained. Measured. Worn black clothing, no armor, no insignia. Just a long coat, sun-bleached and dust-frayed, and a rifle slung casually over one shoulder. An old one. Wood stock. Earth-made. Bolt action. The crowd tilted with confusion. The betting displays hiccuped. One screen refreshed to offer odds of 12,804 to 1. A Thargan snorted. Did they run out of soldiers? In the VIP box, Grand Strategist Vern leaned forward. Zoom on the weapon. The view focused. It was, unmistakably, a Terran marksman rifle, Gen 1. It had no business being in space, let alone in an arena this sophisticated. The woman kept walking. No dramatic gestures. No bravado. Just a slow, even pace toward the center. The rifle still slung casually. She didn't look up at the crowd. Didn't acknowledge Korach's enormous frame or the molten stream hissing 20 feet away. She reached the center of the arena and stopped exactly at the edge of the challenger's mark. Korach squinted. Or tried to, with whatever face muscles he had. "Are you the warm-up act?" She looked at him. One long, slow blink. "Name yourself," he demanded. "Does it matter? I will carve it into the wall of my victory." Another blink. Then dryly, "Mira." He raised an armored claw. "Mira of where?" She finally let the rifle slide into her hands. Loaded a single round. Clicked it shut. "Nowhere that sends flowers." The crowd buzzed. Some hissed. Others jeered. A handful of data brokers quietly pinged their clients to ask if they wanted to bet on a very long shot. Back in the control chamber, Frigg leaned toward Vern. Do we have a file on her? Check the archive, Vern murmured. But sir, it's from before the Concordance War. Vern's brow twitched. Exactly. In the arena, Korach leveled his halberd. I admire your courage, he said, voice thick with pride and disdain. It will look noble in your obituary. Mira adjusted her grip. Funny, she said. I was going to write yours. And that's when the ground beneath them rumbled. The match had not yet begun, but the arena knew what was coming. Sensors flared. Combat drones retreated. The broadcast feeds zoomed. Somewhere, 12 million viewers leaned forward in a dozen languages to whisper the same thing. She brought a bullet to a plasma duel? The peace arena held its breath. Mira exhaled. And for the first time in 7 years, the crowd remembered what fear smelled like. Mira Halden didn't blink when the horns blew to signal the formal challenge. She didn't adjust her stance, didn't scan the crowd for sympathy or awe, didn't even seem to notice that the arena's adaptive climate was now mimicking the oppressive heat of a pre-industrial Terran jungle. She simply tilted her chin and shifted her weight. Fractional, deliberate. The rifle stayed in her grip like it had never belonged anywhere else. Korach flexed his outer claws and bellowed something in his native tongue that could have been a challenge, or just poor digestion. His limbs spread, a halo of bioluminescent rage forming around his torso as his armor plates snapped into offensive configuration. The arena's AI took the cue and pulsed the lighting to a deep, combative crimson. The jungle terrain shimmered into greater complexity. Vines thickened. Rocks sharpened. The lava stream brightened to a petulant orange. But Mira merely squinted. Korach watched her in disbelief. No armor. No augmentations. No gravity-synced gear. You're not even neural-linked. Observation, she said, her voice like sand across velvet, is a form of armor. He snorted, though it sounded more like a car accident. You mistake poetry for defense. Typical human. And there it was again. That word. Human. Always said with a pat on the head or a sharpened claw. As if being from Earth made you less evolved, less dangerous. A curious thing in a zoo. A musical species. Bright, brave, broken. Mira had heard it all before. They thought she didn't look like a warrior. They weren't wrong. Her frame was wiry, her eyes dark and unreadable. Her face wasn't the kind that showed up on war memorials. There was no square-jawed heroism, no mythic beauty. Just stillness. A face so quiet it made noise suspicious. The arena roared as the announcer launched into an oversaturated biography of Korach. Honored guests, please extend your appendages for a warm-blooded welcome to General Korach, conqueror of the Thorn Moons. Wrecker of the Sentinel Forge. Slayer of the 63rd Psalm. He raised his halberd again and spun it once. My victories have carved a path across 6 star systems, he said to her. What's your legacy? A journal full of metaphors. Mira shrugged. 1 bullet. 2 if I'm in a generous mood. A flicker of confusion flashed behind Korach's eyes. He wasn't used to resistance this early. He wasn't used to resistance, period. Most of his opponents begged for mercy by now. The humans were usually expressive. Panic, terror, noble last words delivered with trembling chins. But this one was off-script. He paced a semicircle around her. They say humans fight with passion, he said. Desperation. Emotion. Not always, she replied. Sometimes we fight with math. The crowd didn't catch it, but one Thargan scholar in the corner stiffened. He tapped into his archives. Math. Why did that word sound like a threat? Meanwhile, across the arena, the betting odds recalculated again. Not because the AI had noticed anything statistically promising, but because too many low-volume bets had begun tipping toward Mira. Someone, somewhere, had noticed her. In the VIP box, Grand Strategist Vern sipped from a cup that glowed faintly. Pull her military record, he said to Frigg. We have no confirmed matches, sir. No confirmed ones, Vern murmured. Try the sealed concordance files. Use the code name Quiet Knife. Frigg's visor blinked. That file is flagged, Omega clearance. 5 layers above classified. Override it. Below, the final arena calibrations began. The sky above the arena darkened to simulate dusk. Exotic birds, real unfortunately, were released for ambience and immediately fled. A sharp synth tone vibrated through the floor. A wall panel slid open and offered both fighters a tray of ceremonial enhancements. Korach reached down, took an energy injector for limb acceleration and a neurosync mask. He pressed them into place with ceremonial arrogance. Mira looked at her tray. A small pack labeled Human Options, Painkillers and Regret. She pushed it away with her boot. The announcer voice rose again. Oh ho! Our Earthborn contender forgoes enhancements. A move of bravery, or madness. Let's find out together, friends. Do you always perform while you kill? She asked Korach, voice mild. It's not performance. It's tradition. No, she said. It's theater. You just haven't noticed where the curtain is. Korach lunged. It wasn't the start of the fight. That would be signaled by a formal flare from the Peace Tribunal drone still doing a slow lap of the arena. But it was an insult, a pre-game swipe meant to intimidate. His halberd whistled through the air with more sound than intention. Mira didn't flinch. She stepped sideways, casually, and let the blade slice air. He pivoted with surprising grace, claws sweeping toward her ribcage. Still, no motion from Mira. Just a subtle rock of her back foot. His second strike missed by a whisper. The drone beeped once. Peri-combat aggression detected. Please cease flirtation. Korach pulled back, growling. You think evasion is victory? I think you confuse volume with outcome. From the crowd came a few uncertain chuckles. A Julari leaned toward another. Is she doing a stand-up? But those watching carefully, the veterans, the analysts, the war-scarred species who had bled for territory, were seeing something else. Timing. Spatial control. A stillness that only came from a fighter who didn't need to move until it mattered. In the high chamber, Frigg gasped. Sir, she said, I found footage. Concordance War. Moon of Talsora. A sniper team. 8 kills in 42 seconds. Her. No visual confirmation. But same rifle. Same gait. And a call sign in the transcript. The woman with the loaded paws. Vern tapped the glass. Then the fight's already over. Frigg stared. Sir. Watch, Vern said. She's not fighting him. She's measuring him. The drone flared. A golden spark hovered over the center ring. Fight begins. Now. Korach exploded forward. No taunts now. This was muscle, fury, calibrated violence. He blurred through the jungle. Trees splintered. Rocks cracked under his weight. Mira moved. 1 step. Just 1. The halberd came screaming down. She ducked, but not backward, forward. Past his dominant strike zone. Close enough to feel his heat, but out of lethal range. She slid along the earth, left hand brushing the soil like she was learning its language. Korach turned, but she was already repositioning, back to her feet, 20 degrees to his left, just outside his most practiced arc. She raised the rifle. No shot, just the motion. Korach recoiled slightly. It was small, almost imperceptible. But Mira saw it, indexed it, logged it. From the crowd, stunned silence. From the mollusk announcer, a gurgle of hesitation. And an unorthodox start for our human representative. No strikes landed, but no strikes taken either. Mira smiled, barely. She hadn't come here to win a fight. She had come here to end a story. Korach backed away, only slightly, and adopted a defensive posture. You mock me by surviving. No, she said. I remind you you're mortal. In the distance, a timer blinked. 90 seconds in. No blood. No damage. And yet, somehow, the entire arena felt colder. "Tell me something," she called to him. He narrowed his eyes. "Have you ever died before?" The crowd gasped. It was a barbaric question. Forbidden in most systems. Taboo. Korach's jaw clenched. "I am death." "No," she said. "You're a highlight reel waiting for a last frame." She pulled the bolt. The rifle clicked. One round, still chambered, still unfired. He roared and charged. This time, she didn't move. She waited. Korach closed the distance in a blur of plated limbs and plasma-slicked fury. His halberd cleaved a line through the humid air, tearing down one of the synthetic jungle trees with a crackling sizzle. Bark sprayed like shrapnel. The audience screamed, some in exhilaration, some in horror, as the Xanathi general descended upon Mira with the momentum of a meteor wrapped in religious fervor. And she didn't flinch. At the last possible moment, she stepped inside the arc of his strike. Not away. Not sideways. Inside. His blade hissed past her shoulder, close enough to raise a heat welt. Her heel dug into the mud, twisting her hips as she let his momentum overtake his control. He stumbled half a degree off balance, barely visible, barely anything at all, but Myra's eyes narrowed. She'd felt the weight shift, catalogued the exact timing. It was enough. She slid back 5 paces and let the rifle settle into her hands again, loose and certain, like a habit or a hymn. Korach growled. "You're fast." "No," Mira said softly. "You're predictable." Around them, the arena pulsed with neural thrill, a billion viewers now watching through connected feeds, experiencing the match through Korach's vision, his heartbeat, his temperature spike. But something was wrong. Their hero wasn't dominating. He was missing, lunging at shadows. And she hadn't even fired yet. The announcer Mollusk stuttered, voice losing some of its polish. "A curious development, folks. The human appears to be employing evasive techniques. Perhaps she's buying time." She wasn't. She was counting. Korach stormed the flank, tearing through foliage, bringing the halberd in from a low arc meant to cleave at the knees. Mira leapt. Not high, not dramatically, just enough. Enough to let the blade pass under and for her to land on his dominant wrist, forcing a stagger. He roared in shock. She used his shoulder as a pivot, flipping off it and landing 6 feet away in a crouch, already tracking him with the rifle. No shot. Not yet. Just pressure. The audience didn't know what they were watching. This wasn't gladiatorial combat. This wasn't brute force against brute force. This was chess. On fire. "She's drawing him into a pattern," murmured one Julari tactician, feathers trembling. She's mapping his decisions." "Impossible," replied a Thargan historian. "Humans don't have the neural architecture for that kind of real-time combat projection." The Thargan paused. "Do they?" In the control box, Frigg zoomed in on Myra's pupils. "Sir. Her dilation ratios. She's in a recursive processing state." Vern's lips tightened. "She's running simulations." Korach lunged again. This time, he twisted mid-strike, feinting a low blow and spinning the halberd upward in a vicious corkscrew. It should have caught her clean through the ribs. But Mira wasn't there. She was already behind him, crouched, pressing her fingers briefly to the ground. The humidity, the mud, the smell of copper in the air. Variables. She breathed through them all. Korach turned, panting. "Stand still." "No," she said. "You're still learning the shape of defeat." She moved through the artificial jungle like smoke. Minimal motion, maximal result. Her rifle remained pointed downward, almost insultingly disengaged. The crowd booed. They wanted fireworks. They wanted blood. They didn't understand what they were witnessing, the calculus of violence. He threw a plasma grenade. She ducked behind a fractured column. The blast sent shards of synthetic rock and molten bark spiraling outward. A fragment sliced Myra's cheek. She touched the blood absently, like she was reminding herself she was still alive. Then she smiled. Just faintly. Korach noticed. "Why are you smiling?" She looked up. "You blinked." He didn't understand. Not yet. But the patterns were set now. 10 minutes of combat, 5 dozen decisions. Each of his angles, strengths, flaws, recorded, logged, and reduced. She rose slowly. The rifle came up. For the first time, her finger rested on the trigger. Across the arena, the neural feed from Korach's POV jittered. Half the viewers disconnected in a wash of nausea. The system was registering something impossible, a rising spike of uncertainty. Korach screamed and charged. Mira didn't move, didn't blink. She inhaled once. The world slowed. This was the difference, where training ends and instinct begins. The microsecond gap between what is seen and what is known. She saw the lunge, the overreach, the glint of overconfidence in his upper thoracic plate, the flash of his left rear talon sweeping inward to compensate. The mistake he didn't know he'd make until it was already made. She exhaled and pulled the trigger. The sound was unimpressive, a sharp, clean report. No fanfare, no plasma cascade, just a single crack of burning powder and old Earth engineering. The bullet left the chamber. It traveled through the arena with ancient intent, slicing air, brushing a falling leaf mid-flight. Then it struck, not flesh, not bone, but armor joint. Ricocheted into the inner elbow, through the halberd's base. Then finally, into the exact point where Korach's left lung sac met his respiration node. Not a killing shot, but enough. Enough to rupture pressure balance. To short his reflex array. To drop him to one knee. The silence that followed was not natural. It was shock. Korach gasped, claw scrabbling at his chest. His weapon fell. The glow of his armor flickered. He looked up, not in rage now, but disbelief. Mira stepped forward. "No theatrics?" she asked. "No final words about honor?" He tried to speak. Blood foamed instead. The drone descended. The announcer's voice returned, soft and halting. Combatant Korach, incapacitated. Human Mira Halden, declared victor by technical submission. And then the arena exploded into chaos. Screams, applause, shouting in 12 dialects. Protests from the Zenthari. Urgent communiques launched from the VIP box. Several off-world casinos suffered immediate financial collapse. Mira stood in the eye of it all. She didn't lift her rifle, didn't celebrate, just turned, slowly, and walked away. The same gate she entered through opened with a hiss. She paused once at the threshold, looked over her shoulder, caught the eye of the nearest camera drone. Her voice, low and calm, barely carried over the broadcast. "Tell command, sectors not secure." Then she stepped into the darkness. And the galaxy, for the first time in a decade, forgot how to breathe. The phrase, sector secure, had always been ceremonial, an echo of diplomacy more than a reality, but it had never been openly laughed at before. Now it was a punchline. Within 9 minutes of Mira Halden's departure from the peace arena, 6 subcommittees across the Galactic Unified Command went into emergency session. By the 12th minute, the word containment had been redefined twice, once metaphorically. Entire linguistic branches of the Julari Assembly were temporarily frozen pending re-evaluation of what it meant for a sector to be pacified. The recording of the shot, was played 1.2 billion times within the first hour. Slowed, reversed, dissected by physicists, poets, and warmongers. Even now, it looped across the galactic newssphere, showing that final frame. Myra's rifle angled upward, the recoil barely jostling her stance, the calm before the crack that sent a warlord to his knees. On a barren diplomatic moon near the Spinward Reach, an ambassadorial assembly watched the clip for the 6th time in silence. When it ended, an elderly Zarn, a crystalline species that communicated via chime, rang his lowest note. She used a ballistic weapon. Another chime answered. Unaugmented reflex. Manual targeting. A pause. Then a brittle-sounding hum. Humans aren't supposed to be able to do that. The room didn't disagree. No one did. That was the problem. Somewhere deep within the Zenthari Consensus archives, a bioluminescent node pool boiled in agitated murmurs. Their emissary, a particularly pompous memory cloud named Shai Len, pulsed violently against its containment dome. It was a trick. A propaganda maneuver. A violation of the spectacle clause. Another node, older and less ambitious, pulsed slower. No, it said. It was math. The old kind. Terran kind. Back on the orbital command deck above the arena, strategist Vern stared at the wreckage. The arena floor was still scorched. Korach had been medically stabilized and quietly sedated, now en route to a rehabilitation sanctuary where no one would ever ask him to speak publicly again. The audience had long since dispersed, some confused, some angry, most merely stunned into a new awareness. Vern held a small data chip in his palm. It pulsed with a red icon, threat assessment, pending update. Frigg stood nearby, her voice quiet. Do you wish to submit a revised classification for Earth origin combatants? Vern didn't look at her. Yes. To what level? He exhaled. Unknown. There was a longer silence. We'll need a new doctrine, she said. No, he replied. We'll need humility. Elsewhere, entire research divisions pivoted. The Thargan War College issued a last-minute syllabus revision. Primitive strategy in modern war. The Mira equation. The Julari Council passed an emergency resolution banning all poetic speech in the training of non-humans, fearing it might somehow encode violence. Meanwhile, the humans themselves were largely unaware of the storm their representative had caused. Earth's official delegation had been reduced to a cultural outreach mission, mostly involved in art exchanges and culinary diplomacy. When news reached them, the ambassador, a graying woman named Sanvi Patel, blinked at the footage, sipped her tea, and muttered, "Well, that's Mira, isn't it?" She didn't elaborate. No one asked. On Myra's end, there was no fanfare. No parades. No medals. She didn't return to Earth. Didn't issue statements. No interviews. She simply disappeared. But not into obscurity. Because somewhere in the outer systems, rumors bloomed. A single human woman walking through the scorched moons of Carthai, untouched. A sniper who took down a mercenary cruiser's bridge with one bullet from a mining station 2 kilometers away. A face in the background of a diplomatic summit where peace held just a moment longer than anyone expected. And across the Empire, a quiet recalibration began. Ships paused before entering human-controlled zones, even the supposedly neutral ones. Species that once snorted at Terran diplomats now watched them with cautious interest, as if trying to guess which of them had once held a rifle. Because it wasn't the rifle. It was the stillness. The decision. The quiet precision of someone who didn't fight to win, but to make a point so sharp it left the universe bleeding. In a seedy port bar on Valaris 9, the kind that smelled of brine and betrayal, a bounty hunter put down his drink when a grainy replay flickered across the wall. The moment Korach fell. Myra's face as she turned away. Someone nearby scoffed. Fluke. The hunter didn't answer. Just traced the rim of his glass. She walked away, the scoffer continued. Didn't even finish him. Weak. The hunter looked up, slowly. His eye, cybernetic, outdated, still smarter than him, glowed dimly. She didn't come to kill him, he said. She came to show us where the edge is. That silenced the table. In a small farmstead on a colony world no one had invaded in decades, a child picked up a broken old toy rifle and pointed it at the horizon. Her mother said nothing. Just watched the girl stand still for a long time, aim carefully, and whisper, "One shot." Legends are funny that way. They don't need armies, or banners, or soundtracks. Sometimes they just need silence. The peace arena was scrubbed of its jungle set 2 days after the duel. The official footage was archived, then quietly tampered with, cuts inserted, metadata corrupted, angles blurred. Not to erase Mira Halden, but to make her harder to find. Because if she could be found, she might come back. And no one wanted to stand on that sand again. But the raw version survived, pirated and passed from hand to hand, across battlefields, into the bunkers and barracks where soldiers learned to fight. They didn't watch for the violence. They watched for the stillness, for the breath before, the blink after, the moment a human woman raised a relic of her past and changed the balance of the present. One shot, one sector. And for the first time, the galaxy realized, peace was not the absence of violence. It was the presence of someone willing to wait long enough to make the violence count. In a quiet corner of a frontier moon, Mira sat in the shade of a crumbling satellite dish. The sun here was soft, the wind forgiving. Her rifle rested beside her, wrapped in cloth, barrel cleaned but never polished. She ate slowly, methodically. No rush, no need. She heard footsteps behind her and didn't turn. "You followed me a long way," she said. The voice that answered was careful, young, honest. "I wanted to say thank you." Mira nodded. Still didn't turn. For what? For proving we're still dangerous. She almost smiled. No one's dangerous until they're underestimated. The voice paused. "Will you fight again?" Myra's fingers brushed the stock of the rifle. "If it matters." Then silence again. The kind that speaks louder than speeches. And far above, unnoticed by those who thought the sector secure, 1,000 reports were rewritten. Strategies revised. Species remembered a lesson they didn't know they'd forgotten. That the smallest ripple, in the hands of someone precise enough, could become a tidal wave. That one bullet, in the right hands, could redraw maps. And that somewhere out there, walking through the dust with nothing but silence and certainty, was a woman with no flag, no rank, no war left to win. Only a rifle. And patience.